Here we are again, been to 2 or 3 other shops, and they all threw up their hands and said, I don't know, I just don't know. But we do. We found it. Let's find out what it was. Let's get started. This is a 2016 Chevy Suburban with a 5.3 liter, and it's in pretty good shape, but the customer's been having some serious issues. I'm going to read you actually kind of a long list that she gave of some of the symptoms she's having, and then we're going to go into detail after we take a quick look around the vehicle inside, what we found. Let me grab the list. The first instance she has is if it's idling for an extended period of time, the check engine light comes on, it starts running really rough. And it has issues accelerating. It's like it's low on power. The second one is when coming to a stop, the engine will just shut off. It'll stall on her. The electrical, everything still works, but the engine will just stall. And the third thing is when she goes to turn off the vehicle, the engine will kind of rev and then come back down until it finally shuts off. You could really go in 12 different directions with those symptoms. Oh, it needs this sensor, it needs that sensor, it needs a camshaft, it needs a... And you could play that game all day long. But Daniel's son actually diagnosed this one, and fairly quickly he got to the bottom of it. Here in the shop we use a database service called Identifix. You can type in codes or symptoms, and it'll list what other shops all over the country have found. We typed in the symptoms and he scanned for codes and found the codes. And there was like little onesies and twosies, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, a few things here or there. But there was one item that stuck out. And we'll show you what we found with that here in a minute. But before we dive in, let's go ahead and take a look around this thing and actually take a look at the vehicle. It's a nice, tall Chevy Suburban. This is not the newest iteration of the Suburban, but it's not one of the older ones either. This one's in pretty good shape. And they're not had any other serious issues, but what just crept up today. So as you can see, this thing is rolling on 20s. Big 5-spoke 20s on it. As you go down the side, it's not caved in or beat up or rusted or anything bad. It's got a little bit of dirt on it from traveling on the road, but nothing serious. Around the back, it does look like it's missing some of the badges. Maybe it's been repainted in the back, but that's not really why it's here. And on that side, equally as nice. Let's let Mrs. Wishart show you guys around the interior before we jump under the hood.
So legends, here's our gauge cluster, and yes, it is off. We cannot turn it on because there are things tore apart in the engine that we cannot turn it on. So live in mystery. I hope you can survive not knowing how many miles are on this Suburban. But nonetheless, nice gauge cluster. I like that design. It's very simple, nice and easy to read. Our dash is in really nice condition as well. Nice leather wrap as well. Got a GPS system there as we move down. Got a nice leather wrapped dash that goes to a very large infotainment system and controls for our HVAC as well. We've got a few family things here. It looks like we've got like a binky, we've got a cute key wrap, and we've got other nice little things because this is a lady's car. I look way over there to the passenger seat. We definitely have a large section in the center for that armrest with a divider in the center. So if you have each have your own side, and a nice spot even there says for your cell phone. That's cool. But seats are nice, leather as well. Not a lot of bolster on them, but you're not literally drifting around corners in a vehicle this big, but it is nice and comfortable. The headrest is adjustable up and down though. If we look at our door card, we do have some nice faux wood trim, but we also have a lot more of this dark charcoal color. So it's very dark in the car. So here we are. This mama is hauling lots of stuff. This is a 7-seater, even a little booster seat in that back seat. Wow. So definitely not the minivan we're used to of the day, but this definitely can haul the people in here. It's looking good though. Has some nice utilitarian mats on the floor. Got a few crust and crumbs down there. Probably a French fry or two. She's hauling kids around. You can't fault them for dropping one of those French fries. As we look up, that headliner's in great condition though, nothing crazy going on. Looks like we've got a couple infotainment systems going on. Keep those kids happy and content rolling down the road. Back at our steering wheel, got our simple controls here. If we look at our door over there, we've got controls over there as well for those windows. Looks like it's very easy to navigate. Everything we're needing to reach is definitely within arm's reach. So enough of this interior talk. I'm really curious what's going on with this thing. If 2 shops couldn't figure it out, man, must be something complicated.
You know, working on cars all day really works up an appetite. It's lunchtime, let's take a quick break. I like to get away for a few minutes at lunch and recharge and get something really good to eat. Oh good, the latest Good Chop shipment has arrived, our sponsor for today's video. If you love high quality steaks, salmon, chicken, pork, and bacon, you've got to try Good Chop. This meat is fresh, unlike what Mrs. Wizard got several months ago from the supermarket. The meat we were going to fix for supper one night looked okay, but when we opened the package, it didn't smell right. She had picked up a few days earlier and it was already going bad. Good Chop vacuum seals and flash freezes their meat at peak freshness. No more useless trips to the grocery store for questionable meat. They ship it straight to our door. We choose from over 70 high quality cuts of American sourced meat and seafood. Just think, you can help support a Kansas rancher by eating one of their grass-fed steaks or free-range chicken breast that was raised just down the road from our shop. We can enjoy wild-caught salmon, shrimp, and other seafood we can't get here in landlocked Kansas. You're thinking it will cost a fortune, right? Wrong. Good Chop's meals start at $3.32 a serving. That's cheaper than a lousy hamburger from the burger joint. Plus they have a 100% money-back guarantee. Love Good Chop or get your money back. I'm loving this New York strip steak. Go to goodchop.com/YouTube and use code CARWIZARD130 or click the link in the caption below and get $130 off across your first 4 boxes. Stop wasting your time in the grocery store getting old and potentially spoiled meat. You and your family deserve better. You've got to try Good Chop. All you have to do is go to goodchop.com/YouTube and use code CARWIZARD130 to get $130 off across your first 4 boxes. The link is in the description below too. Now let's get back to the shop in today's car before the boss gets mad. Alright, now that I'm recharged, I'm ready to dive into this Suburban. Actually, let's play the game. You guys like to play the game in the comments and let me know what you think it is. Based on the symptoms you heard, let's see if we can figure out what's wrong. Is it A, a bad mass airflow sensor? Is it B, a bad camshaft and lifters? Or is it C, something to do with the fuel system? Let's find out. So Daniel's son, like I mentioned, is checking this out, and when he typed that information into Identifix, it mentioned a high pressure fuel pump could be failing. I am very familiar with these 5.3, 6.0s, 4.8s from years past, but not so much on the new ones that are direct injection. It actually gave a test to unplug the PCV hoses from the intake assembly. And one thing we noticed before we did that is the fuel trims were way out of whack. Like it was minusing way high into the 20s. It was just like there's a massive fuel leak inside the intake or something's going on and the ECM is freaking out. It's like, we got to pull back fuel. There's a ton of fuel getting into this car. It said, disconnect the PCV hoses and watch your fuel trims. And I was thinking, that's kind of odd, but okay. And sure enough, they went back to normal. And in the test, it said if you observe them going back to normal, the fuel trim numbers, 99% chance you have a bad high pressure fuel pump. Let's open the hood and take a look. So here's our 5.3 liter engine. You can see the intake is off. In the back, that hole you see is not for a distributor. Obviously this isn't Grandpa's Chevy, it doesn't have a distributor. But it still uses the camshaft to operate something. That is the high pressure fuel pump. You see all those high pressure lines and the high pressure fuel rail? This is a direct injection vehicle. And you cannot get to any of those parts and pieces without first removing the entire intake manifold. Kind of reminds me of the North Stars or the LS400s where the starter is under the intake and you can't get to it until you remove the intake. It's that same idea. Same things are going on here. Danielson actually has that removed and we have verified that is what's wrong. So what is direct injection? What is different from normal fuel injection? With normal fuel injection, the injectors are in the intake manifold and they spray and mix with the air going into the cylinder heads at about 50 psi, 40 psi, something like that. High pressure fuel injection is not in the intake. It's directly sprayed into the combustion chamber right on top of the pistons. You can't do that with 40 psi. It's just not going to work. You got to bump that pressure way up. That's what the little pump in the back does. 1, 2, 3, 400 psi, really high psi, to overcome the pressures in the combustion chamber and spray directly into the cylinder. It's actually a very good system, but just like on Audis, Volkswagens, BMWs, any other vehicle that has a high pressure fuel pump, they usually run the power, or to actually operate the pump, off of the camshaft, where it has a little lobe that runs up and down and pumps the fuel up and everything. But because the high pressure fuel pump, the bottom of it, is exposed to the entire crankcase ventilation system. Let me show you. Here we have the intake manifold removed. Here is a chamber, intake chamber, and here is this is a noise insulation type of a foam that goes underneath the intake. Because the high pressure pumps are kind of noisy. They sound like a diesel almost. So they tried to quiet it down with this. But anyways, here's our high pressure fuel pump. Fuel comes in here, it pumps it up to really high pressures, and then supplies it to the direct injection injectors through this threaded port here. And it's electronically controlled here. You can raise and lower the pressure electrically. So that hole in the back is where this thing sits, just like this. Fuel should come in to this pump and go right back out. It should not be going anywhere else in the engine. But these are very common to fail, where the seals inside fail and it starts spraying down here. Look at that spring. It was dry when we pulled it out. And you can smell gasoline all around this thing here. It's very, very strong. So when this thing builds up to 200, 300 psi, it's just like a fog of gas coming out, like shh, and spraying into the crankcase. So that's not good. Gasoline is not supposed to go in your engine oil. If it was in large quantities, it could dilute the engine oil and hurt the engine. This thing's not dumping fuel in, but it's spraying just enough that the fuel's going through the crankcase and then into the crankcase ventilation system and into the intake. Let me show you. Right here is a passenger side PCV, and over there is the driver's side PCV. Those both empty into the intake directly. They're supposed to get rid of crankcase vapors. That's all they're supposed to do. Unfortunately, we have tons of gasoline being mixed with that. Fuel is not supposed to go through the crankcase system and into the intake. That's why the computer is freaking out. The computer's saying, I told X amount of fuel to go in, but my sensors are telling me there's a crap load of fuel going in. What the hell's going on here? So it's trying to cut fuel to try to mitigate this issue, and it's not working. And finally, it cuts the fuel so much it actually stalls the engine or makes it run rough. It's not accelerating right because the power's been cut so bad. The computer is like, I don't know what the hell's going on here. How is there so much fuel? All because of the high pressure pump. It failed on the other side of the pump. There should be no gas coming out of there, but it was. It's filling the crankcase with a fuel vapor fog. Can you imagine if you dropped a match in there? It'd probably blow the whole engine sky high. That'd be bad. That's as if there's oxygen in there. So that explains it stalling, running rough, and acting really strange, accelerating really strange. How does it explain when she goes to turn the key off that it's surging, the RPMs are surging? That's because in the last little bit, the throttle valve opens up a little bit and pulls in all these fuel vapors that should not be there. And it comes back down. All these problems are because of a bad high pressure pump literally fogging the whole engine crankcase with gas spray. I don't care if it's a 2024 car or a 1914 car. There's three things a vehicle needs to have on an internal combustion engine: is fuel, spark, and air. One of those things isn't happening, or happening too much, or not enough, you're going to find the problem. And it was the first one: fuel. There's a couple common issues going on here. Two, actually. One of them being, there's a lot of automotive technicians in the industry that really should not be turning wrenches. And one thing I've learned, patches on your shirt, master certified disc, this and that, that don't really impress me anymore. I'm having to fix the stuff they couldn't do. Also, I've learned in the mechanic field, when you have a mechanic that's very boastful or bragful, I know all this and I know all that. I'm such an elite mechanic. But then you throw them something like this, and it completely throws them under the bus. Were they really that elite, or are they just a bunch of talk? The second thing that's going on here, the person who submitted this vehicle for repairs is a female. She exactly described what she's experiencing. Why is that not enough to figure out what's wrong? No mechanic can know everything about every car. That's why we have databases here. You combine that with your knowledge, and it really cuts a lot of time. I foresee what happened here. Maybe a statement was made, oh, it's just a woman. She probably don't even know what she's talking about. She probably don't even know how to describe what's going on, and it's just throwing us for a loop. I bet it ain't even doing half of that stuff. Absolutely it was. And we listened to her. And we applied that information to the database information and Danielson's expertise of many years of working on cars, and combined we got a solution very quickly. And once we removed the high pressure pump, it was gas dripping on it. We knew. That's exactly what was wrong with this vehicle. How did they miss it? How did they not be able to get to the bottom of it? I don't know. I don't really know the answer to that. I don't know where exactly she took them. I have no idea. But this is becoming a big problem. I've been to this shop, I've been to that shop. I can't figure it out. I actually just got back from Atlanta doing some filming with Cameron and Andy of DC Motor Works. They're the owners there in Alpharetta, Georgia. They work on exotics, Mercedes, all kinds of really cool cars. And I was discussing to them how I'm coming across this all the time. And they're like, yeah, we are too. How are these shops even operating? How do they even stay in business? They don't even know what they're doing. I actually read a comment one time a while back. It said, Car Wizard out here thinking he's the only good mechanic in the world. Cameron and Andy both said, yeah, we feel the same way. Is there not good mechanics out here? So I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the future is with that. I'm glad that we could get to the bottom of this for this customer. We'll put a new high pressure pump in. And guess what? It's going to run fine because the whole crankcase will no longer be fogged with gasoline. It really wasn't that hard. And yes, this vehicle will be getting an oil change because I know the oil's been contaminated. We'll be putting fresh oil in, a new high pressure pump, take care of all those issues. I'm very certain this customer will be happy with the results. If you're curious what kind of tools that Danielson used to take all this apart and to diagnose it, check our Amazon affiliates link in the description below. All the tools you use in the shop are listed for sale there, and if you purchase anything, we get a small cut and we really appreciate it. Make sure to hit the subscribe button because I'm sure this scenario is not done happening. There will be more of them this month. Thanks for watching.